David Westgate, you are the CEO of Andrews, a 50-branch network based in the south of England. You are neither a small independent nor a corporate. Where do you see Andrews in the marketplace, its relevancy, and where it's going in the future? Talk to me.
Yes, thank you, Chris, for having the conversation. It's an interesting one because by our very size, our very nature, we are a corporate. You know, we have a head office function. You know, we have 525 staff. We're responsible for paying a salary to each month. Clearly, we have regulatory issues for that size of business. So, in all intents and purposes, we are a corporate, but clearly we're not the sizes of some of the industry Goliaths. The interesting tension for us is that we want to operate as an independent because fundamentally I passionately believe that we have high street locations, high street shops, and we really, really do want to delegate the accountability and ownership of those locations to our business managers in the field. But of course, they're competing against the small independents, 1, 2 or 3 branches that have effectively skin in the game. And of course, we can't do that in our ownership structure. So yes, it does provide us with a set of challenges.
You talked about the balance of power, and let's be honest, countrywide it got sucked upwards. What have you done to basically put the power and the responsibility down to the branch network?
Yeah, so over the last 2 or 3 years, one of the key features around that has been to de-silo the organisation.
What does that mean in English?
So fundamentally, when you're in growth mode in an organisation, there's a tendency for layers and layers and layers to be built. So, you can quite easily end up with a head office function of 100 people, which generally are more expensive people.
I mean, how many people are between you and a branch manager?
Very good question. So currently in Andrews we have 2 directors on the board, myself and 1 other.
Okay, so that's
the top level with the two non-execs. We then have what we call an executive committee team, which is some senior managers or heads of, so 6 people on that grouping. And then we have area supervisors that actually operationally manage the business out there. And then we have the business managers. So not a lot of people is the answer.
A business manager is a branch manager?
Absolutely, yeah.
So a business manager's got an area manager?
Yep.
And then they report to the executive board?
To the COO directly.
So, all right.
Yeah, absolutely. So we've cut out...
So quite frankly, there's between you and the branch manager, there's an area manager?
Correct.
That's quite lean.
Well, I think part of our issues of the size of the business with 50 branches is I've got to reallocate my central costs. So, I feel quite guilty about that, saying to a branch manager, on a 1st of January, you've got to be lumped with, all of these additional costs. You've got your rent rate, light, heat. Before you even open the door on a Monday morning, you've got a wedge of costs that you can't control. So unless the centre can really, really add value, why would we want to keep piling on more and more costs? And this is the dichotomy, isn't it, between running a commercial business and an independent. Clearly, with small independents, they are the cost. They have no other costs. With a quasi-corporate arrangement, as we have at Andrews, I have to have central functions.
Do you think you offer great value? Because I remember I used to work for the Halifax and used to think to myself, I'm paying for that BMW that the area manager's going around in.
Yeah, I think you'd have to ask some of the branch managers that. But I think at the moment, I think we've got some work to do on that, to be fair. And, one of my mantras with all of the heads of department is, where's your return on investment? How are you adding value? So it's a constant live conversation in the business. And I think if you spoke to any of those people, they would repeat back and say, yes, we are adding value. We can always add more value, so everything from data collection, using, things like Brief Your Market, for example. It's all in good capturing that data, capturing that information, but unless we can actually push back out to the branches and create real instruction opportunities or valuation opportunities, that's where the added value
do you think
comes
it's
in.
Do you think it is the head office's function to provide leads for the branches, or is that a branch function?
I think it's a bit of both, to be honest. I think that I think it's absolutely appropriate for a branch to look for opportunities, market for opportunities, build networks in their local community, and that would be remiss if they didn't do that. But equally, with the power of the digital world that we live in, we absolutely have portal leads coming through, we have briefly market opportunities, various other ways of actually generating leads which are then pushed back through to the business.
One of the biggest issues of running a big brand is that if you look at what happens in Australia and America, it's not necessarily the brand, it's the person within in the agency. How does that work with, if I'm a big advocate of, I hate that phrase, personal branding, but pushing yourself out there as the local property expert. Can that work within a corporate or semi-quasi-corporate environment?
Yes, and it has to, because fundamentally our business manager is everything. We have
that's the branch manager too.
The branch manager. So we have the Andrews badge across the door. That's the bit we can do well and we can support. But fundamentally, this business is all about people. So that individual absolutely has the ownership, the accountability, and the leeway to be able to develop that brand locally.
What's your personal thoughts on the self-employed model? And could that be a possibility in the future of allowing some of your colleagues to go self-employed working under the umbrella organisation of Andrews?
Yes is the simple answer, and we're looking at that at the moment. I think that this is about moving business forward, isn't it? Because it would be very, very naive of me to sit here and say, actually, we have no plans to change the direction of the business. We would fail. So the danger of medium-sized businesses, quasi-corporates, is we don't change with the times. So we have to investigate different models of operation. We have to review the old ways to assess return and so on and so forth. It's about running a business, isn't it? So yes is the answer. That is something that we may well be considering in due course.
But then you've got you are owned by a charity, and there are certain implications with that. Although you said in a previous video that you still have to be run as a professional.
I am effectively employed by my shareholders, which is the charity, to generate profits as a dividend to pay them. How I go about that, I have a pretty open book, to be honest. If I wanted to go and buy a tangential business to property that generates profits, they would probably say that's fine.
And what is the future for Andrews in terms of branch? We're going to talk about hubs and clusters and things like that, which some agents are doing in another video. But fundamentally, in a macro point of view, where are you going?
Yeah, so first and foremost, I'm absolutely passionate that we've got a place on the high street. I think it's critical for our customers that they have a local representation, not only for the brand, but for people. It's critical that our customers can come and meet and greet and see a real person on the high street. So I'm passionate about that. Will we grow the network? I think that for me, at the moment, 50 branches is about right. I can do what I need to do with 50 branches. If we want to grow and develop the business, and it's the right opportunity, yes, we may well open another branch. We are currently in negotiations with some small independents in terms of acquisition. That will always continue. Would I go and grow by another 50 branches tomorrow? Probably not.
I mean, it's almost like a franchise operation, not the self-employed, but somewhere in between where they take your name and you take a percentage turnover.
Yeah, so everything's on the table, Chris. At the end of the day, because of our ownership arrangement, actually no one's telling me that I can or can't do this. It's about providing the dividend that my shareholders want.
Thank you for your time today. I've not been paid to do this video. I just find what David does is fascinating, and I picked the phone up to his PA a couple of months ago and said I'd love to come down to Bath and have a chat with him.